Welcome to Outside the Box Week 12. This is a Stochastic and Fantasy Points collaboration show. We're going to take a look at the tools and the data for both Stochastic and Fantasy Points to find some of the best plays out there for you this week, like we do every week. We've made some good lineups. We've made some bad lineups. Hopefully we can finally win the Millie this week. We haven't done so. We've been trying. We're gonna go down and take down the Millie this week. While you're coming in, please like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already done so, and hit that notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Scott, how you doing this week?
I'm doing good. Love this slate, the main slate after Thanksgiving. Historically, one of my most profitable slates. I think it's just everyone else, gets sidetracked by family and turkey and beer. And I just grind away every Thanksgiving trying to maximize the edge for myself and our subscribers. So it was something like 9 years in a row I had McDonald's on Thanksgiving. Not this year. My girlfriend actually made some chicken and with some of the side dishes, but did sit behind the computer all day. Feel pretty good about this slate. This is a outside the box show where we try and be intentional about poking holes in the chalk, fading the chalk, gaining leverage on the chalk, looking for some outside the box plays. But I don't really think we need to do that this week on a short slate like this. That's typically pretty soft. I think not as contrarian as we typically like to go, but I think this is going to be a fun week.
So you think that we don't need to avoid the chalk as much because you think because people are going to be playing the slate wrong? Or what do you mean by that exactly? By what is different about this slate, you think, than the typical slate?
I think it's just more that there's going to be bad chalk. And like, if you did your research and due diligence, you're going to not have that as like the optimal plays. And so you're just going to be naturally contrarian in a sense. That's kind of my read on it.
Hell yeah. Yeah. It's a 10-game slate. I was thinking it was going to be a short slate because we have, the 4 games have already happened. But because there are no bye weeks, it's a little bit short, but not like an extremely short slate. So that'll save us a little bit of time. And honestly, I was kind of giddy this morning when I realized we don't have to worry about survivor picks anymore. I didn't have to set all that. I know,
it's nice, right?
The segment that nobody really cares about anyway. But Scott finally had a pick that did not go his way, so we get to stop doing survivor picks. We can jump right into this slate. Oh, one thing that I forgot to do is to pull up last week. And to be honest with you, Scott, I feel like I don't remember anything from a week. Like, it has been such a long week.
I know.
For me. I've been just with Thanksgiving. I mean, you say that you're not really doing the traditional Thanksgiving thing as much. I've had 3 traditional Thanksgivings already, sort of, and then also a cousins get together, which was like sort of a Thanksgiving thing. So I've been just like, I don't know, just like not a usual week for me. It's been a long, fun week, but a very so I'm like, I don't remember anything that happened last week, but I'm gonna
and you juggle multiple sports. Like, that's crazy to me.
So, I mean, I'm like, at this point, like, I'm 95% NFL. I do a little bit of NBA right now, but I don't really get into the NBA stuff until after NFL season is over. I'm pulling up the main slate so we can take a look at the winning lineup from last week. I know that you and I didn't have anything great. Oh yeah, it was the Brock Purdy unstacked lineup is what took it down last week. That's what it was.
Yeah, can you pull it up and show it on?
Yep. I'm going to. My mouse was not clicking it right. All right, here we go. I've got it pulled up now. Just give me 1 second, and we can pull up. Here we go. So this is the Millie Maker winning lineup last week. Solo, just like the only lineup this person entered has.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this lineup? Do you think this was a sharp lineup, a well correlated sharp lineup, Neil?
I do not think this was a well correlated sharp lineup. With apologies to Ja Russell. I mean, I know a lot of people say like, you're going to nitpick a guy who just won $1 million. I mean, I've said it before. I'll say it again. And I can say this as somebody who has won the Millie Maker. People who win the Millie Makers. Okay. Scott will be right back. People who win the Millie Makers typically I would not say are like they're not the best players in the world in general. I'm not saying that Millie Maker winners like you're dumb if you won the Millie Maker, obviously, but like a lot of the best players in the world have not won the Millie Maker because you just see stuff like this win from time to time. There's such large contests that it's not always going to be a sharp lineup that takes down the Millie, and I think this is an example of a not particularly good lineup. I mean, it does have the low owned Khalil Shakir piece, so gotta love that. Has kind of low owned Dalton Kincaid, but I'm never playing naked quarterbacks. We had this conversation last week. You can make a case for it. It just means that there's more things you need to get right. Like you basically need to have a 9-leg parlay all hit your way if you don't correlate at all. And this, as far as I can tell, is an entirely uncorrelated lineup. I don't really see any like bringbacks to like he's got 2 Texans players, 2 Bills players, no bringbacks on either. So I don't mean to be insulting to the person who made this lineup, but they just won $1 million. So kudos to them. But I'd say it's a lineup that I would never play. Do you have any notes on this lineup, Scott?
Yeah, it was so funny just hearing the pros rip this lineup apart. Like, oh, if this were me, I wouldn't tell anyone, and I'd donate it all to charity, and then I'd kill myself because this is the worst lineup ever that won $1 million. But yeah, I mean, like, you're not wrong. The only thing I'll say is Brock Purdy was my number 1 quarterback of the week. Devin Singletary, Brian Robinson were my top 2 running backs of the week. DJ Moore, Tank Dell, Tyreek Hill were my top 3 wide receiver plays of the week. Khalil Shakir, I did write up. And then Kincaid, like he was fine. He was one of my top whatever tight end. And so like this is basically like a cash lineup. Like
this guy basically read your article and just played all of Scott's favorite plays and didn't worry about correlation or anything like that.
I mean, I wasn't even too like. I'm sure there were other sites that were right. Like everyone knew that, Tank Dell and Tyreek Hill were great plays. The thing is, though, this is an outside the box show, and like that's how I approached my own GPP. So like that was the cash lineup, but I'm intentionally playing against that for tournaments. And so like weeks like this where the chalk just uber smashes, like it's not going to be our weeks. Luckily, there haven't been too many just chalk onslaught weeks. So yeah, that's all I kind of have to say about that. Like, I guess it makes sense to just play play your cash lineup in like one cheat GPP every week, because you never know. I don't know. Apparently, Drew Dinkmeyer won the Millie that way a number of years ago. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think generally, playing a super chalky, uncorrelated lineup is not the right approach. But maybe one out of every, I don't know, 200 slates or so, or 50 slates, yeah, you'll get super lucky and win $1 million.
Now I wonder if this was just straight up, this person is a cash game player, but wants to always play their cash game in a GPP. That wouldn't be shocking to me if I heard that. The only real surprising piece from this, from a cash game perspective, would be Khalil Shakir. Like outside of Khalil Shakir, this is just a straight up cash game. Or maybe he ran his cash game lineup and just did one pivot or something to Khalil Shakir. I don't know. It's not a lineup that I would play. I don't want to shit on this guy's Millie Maker winning lineup. I know that's it's always a hesitation, but yeah, this is clearly not a lineup that I would play. I think that is a good synopsis of this lineup. We also, I actually haven't even looked at what Alex Baker played last week, because I believe it was last week. Did Alex Baker win the Millie? Yeah, he won. What Millie was this? The 44-44. So the big dollar Millie. So I'm kind of curious to see. I think this is Alex's second Millie Maker win. I know he has a billion different 6-figure wins, but I think this is his second Millie Maker win. Let's take a look at Alex's lineup, because my guess is it's going to be more along the line. Yeah, it's got CJ Stroud with Robert Woods, Tank Dell, and Devin Singletary. That's kind of interesting. He has the low.
He does that a lot.
The running back with his stack.
Yeah, he'll do like dub stacks plus the running back. He does that a lot.
He's also got the correlation of Saquon Barkley with the Giants defense. That really did him well. He's got the bring back with Trey McBride, Evan Ingram in this one, and Tyreek Hill. So really strong lineup. I know you were not a huge fan of Evan Ingram last week. I ended up I
mean, he scored 6.9 points.
Yeah, he didn't do anything for him. I played a ton of Evan Ingram unintentionally last week, because I gave myself I think it was last week that I gave myself about 5 minutes to do my like very, very little time. And I just like last second, I adjusted some other tight end to have a lower projection. And just as a result, like my final run, didn't even notice until after it locked. I was like, oh shit, I have like 50% Evan Ingram. And I thought he was a fine play, but he wasn't somebody that I wanted in 50% of my lineup. So I kind of screwed up my process last week, and that didn't go so well with Evan Ingram. But in a line in a contest like this, where it's the 44-44, like 600 total entries, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to nail every single pick. So he was fine with having just 7 points out of Evan Ingram, 9 points out of Trey McBride. He had enough smash plays that it didn't end up mattering for Alex. So congrats to the 2 Millie Maker wins. Do you have any other notes on this other than the running back with the stack?
No.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty standard. He's got, the bringbacks got some added correlation here. Really nice.
Saquon plus Giants D was sharp. I wasn't on that at all. And it was, as it was going off, I'm like, yeah, that was a sharp call.
Yeah, that was, I said it last week. I was like, I want to be completely out on the Giants offense with DeVito at quarterback. But I said with the Giants playing the Commanders, that was the 1 week that I was thinking about playing Saquon. I don't know if I ended up playing. I didn't play a ton of Saquon. I know that I was thinking about it only because the matchup with the Commanders. Obviously, the Giants defense against Sam Howell makes a lot of sense when he's getting sacked, 5 times a game, something like that. He has like 13 more sacks coming into this week than any other quarterback, sacks taken. So that made a lot of sense. Yeah, it's something that in retrospect, wish I had done more correlating. Saquon Barkley and the Giants defense looks fantastic there. I think we can move on and just talk about this week's slate. That sound good? You ready for that?
Let's do it.
All right, we'll start with quarterbacks. And we can start with, I'll sort by top stacks here for Stochastic. We have the Rams really stand out. Actually, no, sorry. We always start with looking at ownership. So we want to look at the chalkier quarterbacks to start. What do you think of Trevor Lawrence getting 13% ownership, Jalen Hurts getting 12% ownership? We could even throw in Gardner Minshew getting about 10%. Do you like these players at this ownership, or are there other stacks you prefer?
Yeah, I'll just tell you what I have personally.
Sure.
I think Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen are just like obviously the best quarterback plays of the slate in a game that should go nuclear. And apparently you guys have Josh Allen at 5.7%. That seems like stupidly low. I thought heading into this week that it's like, oh God, Jalen Hurts is going to be 15% owned. Josh Allen's going to be 15% owned. And we're going to have to, this entire show today, we would have to talk about like how we're playing against that. And because that's not the case, that really gets me excited about it. Josh Allen has like a phenomenal matchup. The Eagles defense has been getting shredded by quarterbacks. Great spot for the wide receivers. And so right now you're looking over last 5 weeks. Buffalo's defense too ranks bottom 7 against quarterbacks. You're right there at the top. And I don't think that's a coincidence. They've just suffered so many injuries to that defense that I think it's a favorable matchup for both quarterbacks. Both quarterbacks are like essentially tied, easily the most productive quarterbacks in fantasy this year. They're both a little banged up, but it like doesn't really seem to matter. Allen's running more in recent weeks, which is nice. I think with stacks too, like obviously Allen is so much easier to fit with, I think, Kincaid clearly supplanting Gabe Davis as the number 2, but Shakir like is a legitimately strong value. He's running a route on slightly over 2/3 of the team's dropbacks. He's productive. He's making splash plays. He's playing well. He ranks 3rd best among all slot wide receivers in yards per route run from the slot. And then Hurts side, I think people are going to miss this, but I think you could dub stack him now in a way that you couldn't when Goddard was healthy. It just really condenses things. And I like Devonta Smith a lot. And obviously we know AJ Brown, had that, 6 straight weeks of 25 plus DraftKings fantasy points. His numbers suffer without Dallas Goedert. And it actually like is a major benefit to Devonta Smith. There's also like some schematic matchup stuff, heavily pointing in Smith's favor. I like both guys. I also think you can dub stack him in a way you couldn't a couple of weeks ago. So I really like those two quarterbacks. I really don't have any interest in Trevor Lawrence. I am a known Trevor Lawrence hater. It's just he had the second best ever game of his career last week, and it was his only good game this year. And so, like, I'm not gonna play that, at chalk the week after it happened. I just never do that. But I love Stroud. I think Stroud's an awesome play, especially we see this in tournaments, right? So often there's the chalky quarterback. The opposing quarterback is far less highly owned. Just play them because they're correlated together. Everyone likes this game environment. Just play them together. But you can go back to schedule adjusted. Stroud has the much better matchup in comparison to Lawrence. You have way more stackable upside with Stroud, I believe, like 430 plus DraftKings fantasy point games where like Kirk has a seriously overrated ceiling. Evan Ingram has a seriously overrated ceiling. So Jacksonville right there, and you see like a great spot for the wide receivers, which is like the whole, point to playing Stroud, I think, is like Tank Dell, amazing play. Nico Collins, really good play at lower ownership. Schultz also as well in the mix. Whereas with, Jacksonville, it's really spread out, and, Lawrence isn't doing as much through the air. I think you can get away with just playing Ridley in tournaments rather than like a chalky Kirk or a chalky Ingram who really don't have too much touchdown upside. Can we go back to the other page we were looking at?
Yep.
Minshew, I like a lot. I think Pittman's like an amazing play. I think Downs is right there with him as an amazing play. I honestly might prefer Downs, but we'll have to see what ownership looks like. But they're just both awesome plays. That's an easy dub stack. It's easy leverage off of Jonathan Taylor, who looks like the chalkiest play of the slate. And those would probably be, well, there's a close fourth. Kyler Murray, I think, is one of the best GPP quarterback plays of the slate. The Rams are, except for that Dak Prescott game, the Rams were a tough matchup against quarterbacks, but they've been getting shredded by quarterbacks on the ground. Fifth most schedule adjusted. They've only faced two hypermobile quarterbacks, Anthony Richardson, Jalen Hurts. They both had 50 plus rushing yards and rushing touchdowns against him. He's just way too cheap. He's the QB6 over the last 2 weeks. I think he's playing well. He's at least running and looks great with his legs. So I like those four quarterbacks, and then after that, I think there's a teardrop where it gets a little bit trickier.
All right, so your four once again were Allen and Hurts.
Kyler really want to be heavy on. Oh yeah, okay. Really want to be heavy on them, and then Minshew, Kyler, and Stroud. So that's my five.
Minshew. Okay, gotcha. All right, so those are, and that was honestly, I had the exact same first instinct as you, so I'm glad to hear that. My first thought was, wow, Josh Allen against the Eagles. Like when the Bills are going to be in a close game against a team with a bad secondary, to me, Josh Allen was the first player who stood out to me. And then, yeah, as I look at schedule adjusted, it's actually a great spot for both sides, both quarterbacks. I don't think of the Bills as being a great spot for opposing quarterbacks, but yeah, looking at schedule adjusted for the past 5 weeks. So getting both Allen and Hurts at reasonable ownership. I mean, we have Allen at, what do we have it at 5.7% ownership. That does look great to me. Hurts getting a little bit more ownership at about 12%, but those did stand out to me as some of the best plays as well. Yeah, I noticed that last week was really the first time it's hurt you to not have Trevor Lawrence. So and you were still on Calvin Ridley. So you were, even though you didn't like the quarterback, you liked the one pass catcher who got there for the Jaguars last week. And I guess we'll talk about that more once we get to wide receivers, whether we think that that's going to continue being a thing where Zay Jones being available seems to help Calvin Ridley, whether that's a real thing or maybe it's noise. We'll talk about that when we get to wide receivers. Any thoughts on Mahomes against the Raiders?
Yeah, I think so. I gave you my top 5. He would
Yeah.
definitely be 6 for me.
Okay.
Um, I was hoping he would come in a little bit less highly owned. You guys have him at 9%. I think we were a little lower on him, but yeah, it's just I was banking on he flopped in prime time. It looked so ugly with like 9 drops from the receivers that everyone would be off of him. But it's like, yeah, like 9 drops isn't going to happen every single week. You you give him, just they catch 5 of those where it literally hits them in their hands, then he would have scored 28 fantasy points at an absolute minimum. And then this matchup, like I legitimately think this is like an easy top 3 matchup once you remove Max Crosby from the equation.
Yeah.
Crosby is who I would have given my DPOY vote to. Leads the league in pressures, but also like pressure market share, where like he's been the entirety of this defense that wasn't even particularly good to begin with. And you've seen this in some primetime games where it really feels like he's influencing this game. Like with it, you take him out, like the Raiders are losing by 19 points instead of 9 or
Right.
whatever it is. I really think that's massive. So I think this is a great spot for him.
Not to mention, I mean,
Yeah.
with Kadarius Toney and Mecole Hardman out, like obviously, like that doesn't help the quarterback, but it helps you in choosing who you're going to pair with the quarterback because it's going to be hopefully like maybe Rashee Rice is a real thing this week. Maybe he actually plays significant snaps, gets significant volume with a couple just removing. It's not actually removing that much because it's not like Kadarius Toney and Mecole Hardman were every down players, or even I don't think either of them were getting 50% of snaps and close to that, but it helps a little bit to have fewer options to go to in the passing game. So that I think to me like actually helps a little bit, removing those guys, removing options that you can pair with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you could say the same thing about McKinnon too. Now,
Yeah. Oh, good point. I forgot about McKinnon.
30% snap share, 35% inside the red zone. Definitely helps Pacheco, but maybe it makes Justin Watson a stronger play, or Rashee Rice at much lower ownership, or just Kelsey being the guy. For sure, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. And Stafford was not one of the players you mentioned. I think we need to talk about Stafford. We already somebody in chat already mentioned. Yeah, Swaggy says still trying to figure out why people keep stacking Stafford when he's never had a ceiling game in like 3 years, and not to mention he's had 120 fantasy points game all season long. Yeah, he has not been great. It's been like surprising how bad he has been from a fantasy perspective, given how good Nakua was early on. Cup, hasn't really come around all that much at all. But our tools love Stafford once again this week, so I'm going to be going back to Stafford. Do you dislike the Stafford play, getting 6% ownership? Are you with Swaggy there, or are you willing to play some Stafford?
No, I'm with him. So Stafford's this sort of guy who just like he plays through everything. You don't really know what's going on. He plays through everything, but he doesn't play particularly well. He's just like the grittiest guy of all time, where he's like, arm is falling off and he's just like, whatever, just out there chucking it. But yeah, you saw that in the numbers last week as well. He was like the second worst quarterback of the week by accurate throw rate. And that's going to have like a trickle down effect on the receivers. Like I said, I really think Kyler's the way to play that. I like him a lot. I think he's an awesome play. I think he's getting slept on a little bit. But yeah, with Stafford, it's the injury risk. It's also the, Cup's not healthy. And he wasn't getting it done anyway. Personally, I think Kyler's probably the best running back play of the slate for tournaments. So I would just kind of hope that it's the same thing we've seen, where he's
Kyren Williams. Okay.
Uber bell cow who gets all the touchdowns inside the red zone. Like that's a thing to Mahomes, is he is so greedy inside the red zone. He only has 2 touchdowns outside of the red zone this year. Will Levis has twice as many. And that's like always been the case with Mahomes, which is why like Pacheco is typically overowned. But with this Sean McVay offense, you kind of see the opposite, like Todd Gurley, why he was such a fantasy beast, and Kyren Williams kind of been in that role. So that's really hurt Stafford back when he was healthy, and now he's not healthy and Cup's not healthy. So I think you can get away with just Kyler, and then if you wanted exposure, it would be Kyren or Puka.
All right, I'm going to force you to make one stack of Stafford this week, so that
Oh boy.
you have some exposure, some
All right.
reason
All
to
right.
not
That's
completely
yeah.
hate him.
I like that.
Because I just I trust the tool, so I'm going to be playing some Stafford this. I'm not going to go too crazy with it, but like just given the positive leverage, I feel like I need to play some Stafford. Trust the tools because they have done me well in the past. So you and I will build one so that you have at least that one lineup exposure to Stafford. I get it though. Like you're right. Stafford has just been not that great. It feels like to me, it feels like he should be able to. And I've tried it multiple times. I've tried the double stack with Puka and Cooper Cup, and it's never worked out. It has not worked out. I think I'm going to try it one more time this week because they have such a great matchup with the Cardinals, that I'm at least hopeful that they can get it
Yeah, I
done.
mean that's no doubt right. Like that is an amazing matchup for him. It's also an amazing matchup for Kyron, but yeah,
Yeah.
great spot. I mean, you can both get there. And according to our ownership project, we're only seeing 3%. So
Oh wow.
yeah, he might go even lower owned than we're thinking.
Nice. All right. Well, that is heartening. That's good to hear. All right. Let me see. I feel like there were a couple others that I wanted to ask you about. I know that I want your opinion on Will Levis here because I feel like he's been all over the place. He had that. I mean, he had a great game to start. I don't know that he's had a great game since then, but nice matchup here with Carolina. Any interest in Will Levis?
Yeah, I brought this up on our show, and I think John Proctor, DFS goat, I think he like laughed at me for it, but like I can't stop thinking about it. And it's I think Derrick Henry, like, so I just said Kyron's probably the best GPP running back play of the week. Derrick Henry's probably number 2, like excluding like the obvious chalk plays at running back. Yeah, and I think he just goes nuclear this week. And it makes me think, like, I wonder if Derrick Henry's positively correlated to Will Levis in the same way he was with Ryan Tannehill. Like that was just such a weird thing where all of Tannehill's spike weeks were also Derrick Henry spike weeks. Maybe, it's something to do with, the offense revolving around play action, or maybe it's just Henry getting them down, like, or finally sustaining drives and advancing into the red zone. So I don't think I ended up writing up Will Levis, but that is something I gave some serious thought to. And obviously, like, no one's playing DeAndre Hopkins either. No one, Thielen's going to be low owned as well. So there might be more upside to this game than people think.
Yeah, to me, it's an interesting play. I like the volatility there in Will Levis, and obviously love the matchup. So I'm going with your initial instinct and playing a little bit of Will Levis. And then the only other quarterback that I'm sort of interested in here is DTR. Any interest in DTR? Just because to me, Denver's defense has been bad enough that I'm willing to try a running quarterback against them. Do you have any interest in DTR?
No, but I might not have a good reason why. I just kind of. Yeah, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions through 2 starts.
Not a
Only
believer in the talent.
22 rushing yards per game. Yeah. Not really on it.
All right, yeah, to me it's just like a large field flyer. Maybe he can get it done. Maybe I'm wish casting a little bit because I have him in my super flex league where all my quarterbacks got hurt, so I have to start who is available.
Oh,
and I'm like, I
boy,
could see it against the Broncos, so I picked him up. So yeah, I'm probably just wish casting a little bit there with DTR. I think I've finally fallen off. I'm not going to keep going back to the Bryce Young thing, even though he's got a matchup with Tennessee where theoretically it could work out. I think I'm off that train. Any other quarterbacks you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so. Baker's fine. I just personally prefer Minshew, but like it's close. I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great point from Jeremiah.
I would probably play Tommy DeVito over or Bailey Zappi, maybe even over DTR.
Well, you're wrong. Come on,
Right.
Bailey Zappi. Come on, Scott.
I don't know.
You don't mean it.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
I could see Tommy DeVito just because we have seen him do it once. No, against New England, I don't think I could make that.
I just mean like 2 really bad, potentially tanking defense teams.
Yeah. Okay, I get that. All right. Yeah, we got to make sure that Taylor Swift is there. Otherwise, we can't play Kelsey. Everybody knows that.
She's not going to be there.
She's not going to be there.
I think she has a tour date thing.
Oh, I'm glad we have Scott here for that kind of insight. You're
I'll
not just coming to
check
Scott
over.
for the football details. You're also getting the inside info there. All right, we will move on, talk about some running backs. Maybe I'll refresh just to make sure that I have the most updated stuff in the boom bust tool when we start. Oh, look, it was just updated an hour ago. That's good to see. It's going to continue, obviously, to be updated as we get more news throughout the slate.
Guys, breaking. She has a concert in Sao Paulo, Brazil on Sunday. So,
all right,
no T Swift at the game.
Scratch Mahomes. Can't play Mahomes with no T Swift
because
we can't play Travis Kelce. Then what's the point of playing Mahomes? That's brutal. All right. We'll talk about some running backs. Scott, do you have any kind of Black Friday sales going on right now? Anything to note about sales at Fantasy Points?
Yeah. Right now we're 80% off for the rest of the
right.
season. There's still 10 or 11 slates left if you count the playoffs and the Super Bowl. So yeah, $30 for a Fantasy Points premium subscription gives you access to all my articles, gets you into our Discord, and then Fantasy Points data, what you're looking at here. We just added 2 brand new tools. That's only $50. That's 75% off. So if you want to try us out, this would be a good week for it.
Yeah, that's 80% off is quite the deal there to get access to all your stuff. Yeah, that is, and that's for the rest of the year, you said?
Yeah, but I'll give this away. Maybe I shouldn't. We're gonna do a super early bird, which gets you the remainder of this year free, and then next year at the cheapest discount we offer. That's gonna be in 2 weeks. So if you want to wait for that, you could do that too.
Oh, Scott, that is.
I'm such a bad right there. Sales.
You could take advantage of this deal, or we have a better one coming.
I know. Sorry, guys. Yeah.
Well, I brought this up. I brought that up for 2 points. Selfishly, for one of my reasons being selfish. The first one being, I think you have great tools here. I use the Fantasy Points data suite constantly. I've started using the schedule adjusted Fantasy Points per game stuff as my go-to for looking at matchups. So love the tools you guys have. But I also selfishly wanted to tell people about our own deal at Stokastic, which we have 50% off all of our packages for Black Friday. That includes our Sims packages. So if you've been hearing about Sims, you're interested in Sims products, but you don't want to pay the full price, now is the best time. I don't think we're ever going to have it for, at least in the near term future, we're not going to have better than 50% off. So it's a fantastic time to check out what I think are the most powerful DFS tools in the industry. The Sims are available, and you can get weekly or monthly. You can take advantage of the full Sims package, or we have a pared down version where you can't run quite as many Sims. Everything is 50% off right now, and the links are in the description of this video if you want to check it out. So I had to shout that out. When you have 50% off for Black Friday, I feel like that's the kind of deal that I don't usually shout everything out, but I feel like that's kind of deal that you kind of have to shout those ones out when they are available. So yeah, great deals. And you can find the Fantasy Points. You can find the website for Fantasy Points in the description of this video. You can find all of our deals. And on Fantasy Points, Scott, if I remember correctly, you just go, it's plans. It's just right at the top of the page.
Oh, I appreciate you pointing that out. Yeah, thank you.
FantasyPoints.com. Yeah, so you can find our tools, the Fantasy Points tools, all of that is available in the description of this video. All right, let's talk about some running backs out, and I have it sorted here by ownership, and we have Jonathan Taylor as being mega chalk this week, 32% projected ownership. Looks like our optimal rate has come down because we had really positive leverage on Taylor earlier. Now he looks like he's just a neutral play here. We then have Isaiah Pacheco now at 21% ownership with McKinnon out, and then Saquon Barkley 15%. Let's start with those top three. What do you think of Taylor, Pacheco, and Barkley at these ownership levels?
Yeah, so Jonathan Taylor, I think, is an absolute must play in cash. You can say he's the best running back play of the slate. I think that's right. We were waiting for him to get this full-on bell cow workload, and he finally got it. Last 2 games, really just insane usage, and this has been one of the most valuable backfields in fantasy. So if he maintains this sort of usage, and the backfield is this voluminous, whatever, I think he's staring at the best volume of any player in fantasy, including wide receivers. But this is the outside the box show, and he's 33% owned according to you guys.
Yep.
Which means if he has a bad game, you immediately wipe out a third of the field, giving yourself a massive advantage. And so it's important to look at ways that Jonathan Taylor could flop. And I think there's easy arguments you can make. One of which is that he hasn't played particularly well this year. He's been pretty inefficient, particularly on the ground. And this is a brutal matchup. If you want to pull up schedule adjusted, look at Tampa Bay against running backs this year. They haven't given up a single rushing touchdown to a running back all year. Instead, they're a massive pass funnel. Pass funnel, giving up a ton of production to the wide receivers. I like Michael Pittman. I like Josh Downs. And so, again, really like Minshew doubles as leverage off of Taylor. I think if you wanted to just fade Taylor, and not worry about a Minshew, like you could certainly go that route. I think we are approaching the point in ownership where you can get away from him. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, honestly, I am glad to see that we now have him as neutral to slightly negative leverage here, because my first instinct when I saw 32% ownership going to Jonathan Taylor was, well, that's an easy fade, just because it is a tough matchup with Tampa Bay. He has not been great this year. I get the other side of it is that he is only 6,900, which is a great price tag for him. And you look at the volume. So I feel like it's neutral seems about right. Like I think that it's nailed. Like 32% ownership is about where he should be. Like he is objectively 6,900 is too cheap for a guy who is, historically as talented as Jonathan Taylor, getting the volume that he's getting in this offense that has been so good on the ground. But then there is the other side of it of like, yeah, he's playing against Tampa Bay. It's not an easy spot at all. And 69, like it's not like a can't fail kind of price tag at 6,900. So I think honestly, I feel like the ownership is and the optimal odds, that's seems about right to me. Like is that's kind of like what you were saying too, right? Like you can paint a great picture for a rosy picture. Like, yeah, it's a great spot. He's got great opportunity, great price. But then on the other side, it is just a tough matchup for Jonathan Taylor. Maybe they do it through the air. Yeah, this all seems about right to me.
Yeah, I think 33% is right, but I also think like I'm gonna try and come under that just because there's more upside to be had in like a guy owned on a third of all lineups flopping. But I don't know. I'm not the game theory expert. You are, Neil. So
well, I mean, game theory expertise, looking at individual players is like you have to think about the lineup as a whole. Like you can't just play a full-on chalk lineup with Jonathan Taylor. That doesn't mean you can't make plus EV lineups that have Jonathan Taylor in it. You just have to factor in like he's getting a ton of ownership. If you're playing a few players are getting a ton of ownership, you got to offset that with some contrarian plays. So like in a vacuum, I think, yeah, he's a totally fine play, but you need to factor in the fact that he is 33% owned. If you're playing Jonathan Taylor, you got to have somebody in your lineup probably who's going to be pretty contrarian. Although last week I guess we did have the one. We had Khalil Shakir in the winning lineup last week. It was mostly just jam the chalk that won it last week, but more like it's easier to win if you hit on the guys who are not owned, because if you hit on Jonathan Taylor, great, you've reduced a field of 200,000 to now 70,000 lineups you're competing with. So it's like it's great like if you get that piece right, but it doesn't reduce the field of players like you would if it's somebody who's 1% owned, where you're really bringing down the field size of lineups that have that player in it. So yeah, he's a totally fine play. You just need to maybe find some contrarian plays to play around him in some lineups. What about Pacheco? Sorry.
Yeah.
You have
awesome play. This is like absolutely correct. It should like cash lineups. It should be click Taylor, click Pacheco. That's right. He's generally over owned in tournaments for what I described is Mahomes being so greedy inside the red zone, hogging touchdowns, doesn't typically get a lot of target volume. Like I think he's only cleared the 100-yard bonus once. But I mean, already a great value. You could stack him with Chiefs defense, which is one of the best defense plays of the slate by far. Jerick McKinnon's out, so that's 30% of the snaps, 35% of the snaps inside the red zone. CEH is not a thing. He doesn't have a single snap on third down all season. And then you take out Max Crosby, who leads the league in run stops, is the only good run defender on the Raiders, and is like so good that it's actually made the Raiders like okay against the run, or maybe just below average instead of dead last. So yeah, this is now like a top 2 matchup. they should absolutely curb stomp the Raiders. Should be amazing field position, plenty of red zone drives, great play, no issue there. Saquon Barkley, I do want to quibble with for sure. Like, first of all, I think like Kyron Williams absolutely should be drawing Pacheco levels of ownership. I think Derrick Henry should be right there, a little bit behind him, but like within that range. I'd much rather play those two over Saquon. Saquon is just like, okay, like he didn't really do anything. He's still like dealing with an ankle injury actually, until last week. And I don't like playing these guys who did nothing and then smashed the most recent week, that hindsight bias. He is, really talented. He's Saquon Barkley. He is getting like, he's the entirety of the offense, getting a ton of volume. It's like but it's not an amazing matchup on paper. It is an offense that's implied for just 15 total points. So it makes me really question his upside. I don't really love that one, but he's not a bad play.
Yeah, that he was the one, as I was looking through the high owned running backs, that to me stood out as like, yeah, I'm probably not playing Saquon this week. I think I might have I'm not MME, and I'd probably have some if I were playing 150 lineups. But I'm probably, if I'm playing 30 lineups, I'll probably have 0 of Saquon this week, just because I don't know what is the upside in that offense. Like I guess we saw it last week, but in a typical matchup, that's not the Commanders after trading their 2 best defensive players. Like in a typical game, I feel like it's asking a lot for Saquon to pay off that 73 or to put up a score that you really need to have. Like you can put up a score that you want to have, but I don't really see Saquon putting up 35 plus too often in most matchups when Tommy DeVito is the quarterback.
Before last week, he didn't score a touchdown in 6 of 7 games, only hit the 100-yard bonus once. Really just absolutely not a ceiling guy for you. But, the 2 receiving touchdowns last week is going to stick in everyone's mind. This could be a slot fest game, though, just like 2 teams who may or may not be trying to get a top 3 draft pick. But on paper, it's also like not really a good matchup for Barkley.
Yeah. So we'll keep talking about some of it. So Jen asks, and I feel like this is kind of an interesting talking about. Ask, in a Minshew Pittman stack, would you rather run it back with White or Evans? Interesting, because White is now questionable as of today. Saturday downgraded to questionable for this game. So I think to me, if White is playing, certainly. Probably my favorite of the 2 if he is playing, but I think he's truly questionable. Do you have any kind of read on whether White is going to play, or what you would want to do if White doesn't play, or if he does play, I guess?
Yeah, I wish I did, to be honest. I should have spent more time on this before our show. I don't know. I just didn't want to deal with it. So I guess I'm saving it for later tonight. But my cash running backs were going to be Taylor, Pacheco, Rachaad White. Thought he was a really good value, great matchup. Maybe not the highest ceiling, but he's just like so dependable because, he plays every snap. He gets those targets. And so, I don't know what to do now. I don't know how serious this injury. No one does. We'll probably get some good news on Saturday night where it's like, oh, it doesn't look to be too serious, or like, we're going to have to wait and see. He's going to test it before a game, but the team is pessimistic. Chase Edmonds, we wouldn't really know for sure, but I do think most likely scenarios, he kind of steps right into like 90% of the Rachaad White role. They're like comparable players where they're better pass catchers than runners. And like, obviously that's an amazing role. So he's definitely in play as a value. This isn't really a slate where you need a ton of value, but like he would definitely jump up into that value range for me.
Yeah, you can see here over the people, a lot of discussion of who would be the running back. And my assumption would be Chase Edmonds, also just looking at the usage. This is just from the past 2 weeks, but Chase Edmonds, Rachaad White, 98 snaps, Chase Edmonds, 30, and then Sean Tucker has 1 snap over that span. So it appears that Chase Edmonds has been playing as the running back behind Rachaad White. I feel like he could step into the Rachaad White role pretty easily. Like, I don't think he's a super talented running back, but he can catch the ball. He can, take on some workload. So I think if Rachaad White were out, I'd have interest in Chase Edmonds. If Rachaad White is in and not limited in any way, I'd have interest in Rachaad White. It sounds like we're kind of similar. Like you have some interest in a 4,300 Chase Edmonds, but he wouldn't be like a smash play for you if
He might
Rashad
be.
White is out.
He honestly might be a smash play.
If Rashad White is out, okay.
Yeah, I'll have something for Discord tomorrow morning.
Okay, so you're gonna have to keep thinking about, because 4,300, like the price tag is really low. It is a solid matchup with the Colts. If we look at,
he would probably be a smash play. He would probably.
Okay. All right.
I mean, there's definitely uncertainty there. We can't say for certain, it's not going to be a committee, but I don't think it would be.
Yeah, Colts giving up the third most fantasy points per game, scheduled adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs over the past 5 weeks. So it'll be a great spot for whoever is the starting running back for Tampa Bay. And we're making the assumption that it's, I guess it would be a smash play with some risk to it, because we don't know for sure that he would take on that bell cow role. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, at that price tag, though, is there really a lot of risk? Because he'll be RB1 at least, and I do think like they would probably just go the full on bell cow route.
Yeah.
Anyway,
people today keep on wanting to talk about the Bears and the Ravens game. Neither of those games are on the main slate. Khalil Herbert will be value for like season long stuff, but the Bears are on Monday Night Football. Earlier to everybody want to talk about the Ravens. I'm like, they're on Sunday Night Football, so we can't, unfortunately, we can't take advantage of them on these slates. But yeah, those are some interesting plays in those games. All right. Yeah, it is a good point. Like, he is cheap enough that, like, what's the downside? Like, assuming that Chase Edmonds isn't going to lose the role he's had recently, he'll at least score some fantasy points. And for 4,300, you don't need a ton. Okay. Derrick Henry, somebody that you wanted to talk about. I also want your opinion on Tyjae Spears, as long as let's loop them in together, Tyjae Spears with Derrick Henry, just because I was looking at the bell cow report, and it's obviously a great spot for whoever. Great spot for running backs for the Titans, and Tyjae Spears playing 53.6% of snaps over the past 2 games, running routes on 35% of dropbacks. So I almost feel like there's a case to be made for a cheap Tyjae Spears as well as a like kind of off the radar type play. But it sounded like you have more interest in Derrick Henry. I'll open it up to you. What do you have to say about Derrick Henry?
Yeah, I really don't think there's any upside to Spears. Like you'll see he'll out snap Henry, but it's really mostly empty snaps, like empty calorie snaps where he's just pass blocking. You don't get fantasy points for pass blocking. Beyond that, it's like no more than 5 carries and anywhere between 3 to 5 targets, which like I just don't see the upside in that. But Derrick Henry, I think like obviously this has been a disappointing year, but if you like break out his production in wins versus losses, he's the same player he's always been, which is like a guy who is a high-end RB1 in wins, and he's a mid-range RB2 in losses. Because he doesn't catch passes, but he's amazing on the ground. He's the most game script dependent player in like fantasy history. And I see this as a game that the Titans should win. They're 3.5 point favorites, but it's also the nuts matchup. If you want to go back to schedule adjusted, this is the second best possible matchup for running backs on the ground. All rush.
Wait.
Click on rush.
Gotcha.
Running backs on the ground. Or third best. Okay.
Yep.
For the Titans. So, yeah, I'm top 3 matchup. Good game script. Finally, feels like this might be the last week to play Derrick Henry, and luckily, the price came down considerably. He's super boomer bust for sure, but at this price tag, I kind of want to lean more into that boom on a week that's kind of tricky to find. Players with GPP winning potential, or as JM to win says, had to have it scores.
I know Derrick Henry has some like later on in the season splits he gets significantly better. Is that anything? Do you have any notes on like?
Yeah, I tweeted
Thanksgiving.
I tweeted that out like pre post Thanksgiving or December something like that.
Yeah, December. Right.
I don't know. I think some of it is in the snow you lean more run heavy. Some of it is like defenses get banged up, the wear and tear and all that. there might be something small to that. I don't know. It doesn't really factor in the equation for me.
Okay. Not something that you're not the reason that you like Derrick Henry, but obviously it doesn't hurt if the
Yeah.
splits are there for him. All right. Several other running backs that I know you want to talk about. Kyron Williams, you've talked about him a little bit already. Oh, it looks like we updated from earlier in the day. We had him at 1% ownership. I was like, there's no way that's going to hold. This looks more realistic for Kyron Williams. How do you feel about Kyron Williams at 13% ownership?
Yeah, I think that's still way too low. I think he's one of the best plays of the slate. Look at what he was doing prior to injury. He ranked first in snap share, top 6 in XFP, top 3 in fantasy points per game, 18.5. Those numbers look better too if you exclude week 1, I think, where he was still kind of splitting work with Cam Akers. And like from that point on, he was basically in the Todd Gurley role. He gets an easy top 5 matchup. And like if you listen to the press conferences with Sean McVay, the full quotes, it really seems like he's like, yeah, if he doesn't go back to his typical 95% snap share, it's going to be 90%. I think people are reading it the wrong way. Ultimately, it like doesn't matter what McVay says because actions speak louder than words, and the actions were he cut Darrell Henderson and he kept the running back who like contributes to special teams. Like I think we're going right back to the Todd Gurley workload, top 5 matchup, running back who is producing like a top 5 fantasy running back. He's not priced like it. I think he's a sick play.
All right. I'm with you. I like Kyron Williams quite a bit against the Cardinals. Great matchup there. Alvin Kamara, any thoughts on Kamara?
I thought about it. No Michael Thomas. I don't remember what the game script in this is, but he's averaging like 7.5 targets and losses, something like that. I didn't write him up. I didn't think he was close enough to play, but
okay. There are several. Maybe I'll open up to you, and then I'll just ask about any running backs that you don't get to. But first, I do want to, because this is one that I want to talk about. Josh Gillum asked thoughts on Jerome Ford. Seems like a nice spot against that Broncos run defense that teams have been able to run all over on. Any interest in Jerome Ford?
Yeah. What's his ownership? We have him as contrarian.
Yeah, we have Ford. What is it now? Yeah, he's come down to 3%. I think it was 6% earlier, but with all the updates to some of these other running backs, we've got him at just 3%. So that looks pretty nice to me.
Yeah, he's a much better play than 3% ownership suggests. What's notable to me is he was finally allowed to touch the ball inside the red zone last week. Inside the 10-yard line, he played on 5 of 6 snaps, had all 3 of the team's carries. Across the previous 7 weeks, he had just 2 carries. Maybe a third as much as, or a quarter as much as the other Browns running backs. Kareem Hunt did see more work everywhere else, but I mean, still like that's huge is getting that work. And then he's also like a threat to, break off long runs. We've seen it. This is a great offensive line. He's not bad. And he gets the best possible matchup. So 5,600, 4% ownership. I think he's an awesome play.
All right, good. We are on the same page on Jerome Ford being a really strong play. Let me just open it up to you now for a bit, and then if there's anybody that you don't cover, then I'll ask you. If there's anybody that I really like that you don't cover, we can come back to it. Would you rather I sort by ownership or by salary? What's easiest for you?
Keep it at ownership.
Okay. Wait, Yep. Okay, we're sorted by ownership here. So right now we're on still, some of the, I guess we get all the way down to 0% ownership down here. So starting here, who do you like that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, Travis Etienne, like just a strong play. I know he's a little chalky for you guys, but he is the leverage off of, I guess, the chalkiest quarterback and a bunch of chalky pass catchers. People are kind of nervous about recent usage. I looked into that. It's possible it's more than this, but it did look to me to be mostly just extreme outlierishly extreme game script, extreme negative against the 49ers and an extreme positive game script last week. That's what I think it is. But before those 2 games, he was the RB4 by fantasy points per game. Don't like him as much as some of the other names I brought up, but really strong play. Jalen Warren, obviously, really strong play. Najee even is like a fine value, but definitely give the lean to the guy who's performing like the best running back in football this year. And honestly, volume has been really tight in recent weeks. We know he can explode for a long run.
It was so frustrating. They come out last week and they say, I mean, actually, Najee Harris on some of my better best ball teams. So not that frustrating, but surprising to me to hear them before the game last week. They come out and say, okay, Jalen Warren, you're our starting running back now. And then they didn't change a damn thing. It was still Najee who actually played more snaps than Jalen Warren last week. I thought that was kind of funny to see.
Yeah, but people think because Matt Canada got fired and now the running back coach is the OC, that might mean there's going to be a changing of the guard. I don't like. I'm obviously baking that in, but I don't think that's going to be the case because Tomlin told us in the offseason that this RB coach was going to be in charge of delegating snaps for the running backs.
Okay.
But I mean, like, there's still a chance, you fire Matt Canada. That's like a big indication that we're trying to mix things up. I don't know. I think even if you like throw that out and assume it's like the same usage we've seen, he's still a really strong value with upside at 5,400. So
yeah.
I like him. DeAndre Swift is as leverage. He's fine. Bijan Robinson is like honestly a good value, even if he doesn't get any more work than he's been getting. And Arthur Smith has kind of said that, we take it easy on the running backs. And then once they prove something to me, then they get more work. And he's proved to me, blah, blah, blah. There might be something there. Not a great matchup, but he's just talented and he's a fine value. I like Javonte stacked with Broncos defense. It's just like a total boomer bust play. It's basically like if Denver wins by, I don't know, 6 or more points, like Broncos D plus Javonte is probably an awesome play. And then if it's anything beyond that, he's probably a terrible play. Ramondre plus Patriots defense, like it's fine. Connor plus Cardinals defense, it's fine. Joe Mixon, fine. And that's kind of about it for me.
Okay. I think that you named most of the running backs that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to sort by team just to go through real quick, see if there was anybody that I had significant interest in that I wanted to talk about. Well, you shit all over my Tyjae Spears long shot play. I might take a shot or two there, but I think your analysis is right. Like he's out there a lot. It's mostly empty. I guess I'm hoping that at some point maybe they actually up the volume of his actual opportunities. Josh Jacobs. I know you didn't have interest in Josh Jacobs against the Dolphins. To me, this is sort of a similar spot here where it's like the Chiefs defense has been a little bit of a run funnel. He's 6,700. Would you bother running it back? I'll ask you that. Would you bother running it back if you do a Mahomes stack?
Not with Jacobs. I honestly think it would be Jacoby or Mayer, and I don't feel good about that at all. So
you'd want a cheap pass catching option essentially where you don't need 30 fantasy points to pay it off.
I mean, this is another call that Johnny laughed at me for, and rightfully so. It's just like the same exact spot for Jacoby Myers as week 1, where L'Jarius Sneed has been awesome. He's going to shadow Devontae Adams. It's the perfect coverage shell matchup. The difference is like Aiden O'Connell stinks, like isn't even looking at Jacoby. Yeah. And this is kind of like an old school defensive minded head coach who just wants to run the ball. I don't know. I think probably the smartest thing to do is just not play a Raider.
Okay. I feel like it was 3 weeks ago that I was shocked to see that Jacoby Myers was like, I want to say like top 10 in terms of target share in the entire NFL, and it's just completely fallen off in recent weeks.
If Jimmy was starting, he'd be a must play for me.
Okay.
And now you can't play him. It's crazy.
With AOC, yeah, it is crazy how quickly everything changes with the quarterback being out. I feel like we've mentioned all of the running backs that I really wanted to ask you about. Let me just check chat real quick, see if there's anybody that anybody wanted to bring up. DeAndre Swift, do you have any interest there?
Yeah, I mentioned it. Really strong leverage play, solid value. I will just say, like, part of my my thesis behind just Hurts and Allen are just insane plays this week is Buffalo's was really soft against the run to start the year, and then they've really tightened up in recent weeks while getting significantly worse against the pass. I don't know how much that matters. Highest implied point total of the slate, strong volume related value, decent production related value. It's just like, I don't know, like what is there a ton of upside with Jalen Hurts, the GOAT, touchdown vulture? It could happen. He's a good play. He's a good play. He's he's right there with Etienne and Warren, I'd say.
Okay. So he's playable, not your favorite play of the slate.
Yeah, not my favorites, but they're up there. They're good.
Okay. All right, let's talk about some wide receivers. And of course, we've already talked about quarterbacks. So typically we can go through wide receivers somewhat quickly because we've already talked about most of the favorites on there. But sorting by ownership, our highest owned player, man, we're up to 20% on Pittman now. So at one point he was a great leverage play off Jonathan Taylor. Now he himself is also one of the highest owned plays on the slate. We've got AJ Brown, Christian Kirk, both above 15%. Cooper Kupp right there at 15%. So of these four, let's start there. Who do you like? Who do you not like?
Well, I love Michael Pittman. I don't like him twice as much as Josh Downs.
Okay.
I think I'd cost at value. I probably like Downs slightly more than Pittman.
Okay.
Let me pull up what I had on them.
All right, and I will pull up looking at the advanced receiving tool and the data suite. Downs. So I guess this is just the most recent game. Downs only ran routes on 43% of dropbacks. Is that at all concerning for you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. One second.
Okay. You pull that up because it's the first time I've looked at it just since you brought him up, and I'm surprised to see how few routes Josh Downs ran in the last game. Kind of a small sample size because it was even Alec Pierce, 27 routes was the most, so not a ton there.
So someone brought up DeAndre Swift playing in the slot more without Dallas Goedert. That's just like not something I'm seeing at all. He hasn't exceeded 3 targets since week 6, and he came close to a season low in route share last week. I think theoretically that could happen, but the numbers just aren't bearing that out. Sorry, that distracted me. Back to Downs and Pittman.
Yeah.
Right. So Downs was hurt. He had the bye week to rest up.
Okay. His
last 2 games, he played on 20% and 25% of the team snaps. That was entirely due to injury. That's going to stick in the back of the mind of DFS players.
Yep.
But you just throw that out. Totally injury biased games. Like, people are going to see his DK fantasy points per game. Got to throw those out. Wasn't healthy. Just totally bogus. But in healthy starts with Gardner Minshew, he was averaging 8.5 targets, 16.1 fantasy points per game. That's high-end wide receiver 2 production. He also had 97 yards in another game that Minshew came on in relief. He had more receiving yards than Pittman when Minshew did come in. And he gets a best possible matchup. Let's go back to schedule adjusted. Buccaneers are really vulnerable to wide receivers, but they're dead last in the league to slot wide receivers, which is entirely Downs' whole thing.
Okay.
But it's also an awesome matchup for Pittman. So you see plus 2.6. That's like top 6 or whatever, but it's also Jamel Dean is out. They're starting perimeter cornerback. Carlton Davis is questionable. And I just mentioned the Josh Downs splits, but I mean, Pittman splits with Minshew are even more impressive. 10 targets, 17 fantasy points per game. That's low end wide receiver 1 production and volume. Obviously the absence of Downs kind of contributed to this a little bit, but still just like awesome volume, awesome production. I think they're both like, I don't know if you could play them both in cash. You probably can, and Jonathan Taylor too, but like just in terms of point per dollar, these are Two of the top three wide receiver plays of the week in my mind.
Damn. Okay. So you're all in on the Colts passing game. What could go wrong there?
I mean, I'm not like I'll probably have one on nearly all of my lineups, but not gonna. I mean, maybe you can play two, but probably not gonna do that outside of a few Minshew dub stacks. And like I said, I really like the Philly Buffalo game.
Prad, could you reach out to support at stokastic.com? Just email support at stokastic.com. I'm not sure why that would be the case. I've never had an issue with that. So yeah, make sure you email support. So you like both. I think you said two of your top three wide receiver plays on the slate are Pittman and Downs, but you would not play them together outside of a Minshew stack. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. I mean, I wrote them up as like my top three for cash. But at ownership, like I think that doesn't bother me. I would just bump Downs more relative to Pittman because, like I said, I think they're at least like tied.
Sure. I know. So moving down, you had interest in Jalen Hurts, I'm assuming, and you brought up, you mentioned earlier that with Dallas Goedert out, Devontae Smith sees a bump, AJ Brown sees a slight downgrade. Does that mean you like Devontae Smith better than AJ Brown? Do you still have interest in AJ Brown? What's your level of interest in these Eagles receivers?
This was giving me a headache.
Yeah.
I did mention at the top that you can double stack Hurts now without Goddard, and I don't think the field really is looking at it that way. But there is like if you want to just go with Oxum's razor of like what's happened this year, it's just AJ Brown is an amazing play. Devonta Smith is barely playable because AJ Brown hit like 20 DK in 7 straight games, averaging nearly 29 DraftKings fantasy points per game, where Smith fell short of 15 and 7 of 8, something like that. So it's just like, no brainer. Just play Brown. Don't even think about Devonta Smith. But, we were talking about Zay Jones being the key to unlocking Calvin Ridley. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe that's overstated. But you can make the same argument for Dallas Goedert being the key to unlocking AJ Brown, because over the past 2 seasons, Devonta Smith basically leapfrogs Brown as the wide receiver 1. Their volume doesn't change too much, which, you could say this is just bogus, noisy data. But I kind of get that it's something real. Like you lose that safety valve, that underneath option, or Devonta Smith now morphs into that role. And this would be the matchup for it. To have that. I also brought up, or I tweeted about AJ Brown splits when Jalen Hurts is under pressure versus not. He is the most efficient wide receiver in football when Hurts has a clean pocket. He's one of the least efficient otherwise. And like Devonta Smith has the opposite splits. This is a top 6 pass rush. It's also an ideal schematic matchup for Devonta Smith against too high coverage. You add it all up, and it's just a bunch of things pointing for Devonta Smith, who, by the way, last week without Dallas Goedert, AJ Brown had 1 catch. Devonta Smith was 1 yard away from the 100-yard bonus. You could say that's just L'Jarius Sneed shadow coverage. You could say it's something to the Goddard splits. I don't know. Like I said, this is just giving me a headache, but I think it's really close. And I don't know that it's that close by ownership. So maybe that's where the lean should be. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that is a really, like, we have a decent, like, it's still a small sample size, but last year we had Goddard out several games and we saw the big bump to Devontae Smith. So we at least have, it's not just like a 1 game sample size. We had the sample size last year. We talked about it before the last game that the Eagles played, and then it happened. Smith once again put up, I mean, he got tackled at the 1 yard line on a long bomb. If he just gets into the end zone there, that's another like 10 or 9 fantasy points, because he gets the 100-yard bonus and the touchdown with that 1 more yard. Would have absolutely smashed. Of course, that was a showdown slate, so you couldn't play him anyway. But Yeah, I think like at this point we have a big enough sample size that like you can at least play into it when Devontae Smith is not getting crazy ownership. If he was getting 30% ownership, I might say let's just fade the narrative and go to the guy who's been great this year. But yeah, I think that it makes a lot of sense to bump up Devontae Smith and hope that the people continue to fade him and the narrative is real that he's better with Dallas Goedert out. And I agree with you. I think you can play both Devontae Smith and AJ Brown in a lineup.
It's tough to fit, but yeah.
Yeah, right. It's going to be
Easy
very
on
expensive.
FanDuel, but
Okay. Yeah, so I like it. I think that's a great thought to play Devontae Smith in place of and along with AJ Brown in lineups makes a lot of sense to me.
yeah, and again, it's not just that the Goddard thing or what happened in the most recent game. It's also a schematic advantage for
Yep.
Devonta Smith. It's also Buffalo, even without Tre'Davious White, is always really strong against wide receiver ones. They're also always, every single season, the best defense in the league at defending the deep ball. So, like, if there were a week for it to be Devonta Smith, regardless of Goddard splits, it would be this week.
Interesting. What about the other side of the game?
I think I just sold myself on Devonta Smith. This was
I think you just sold everybody on Devonta Smith.
Yes, yeah.
But
all right. Can we talk about I think what the top wide receiver play of the week is?
No, we don't want to talk about
all right. Well, hey, we can.
Nobody has interest in hearing that, Scott. Yeah, tell me about it.
I think it's Tank Dell. I just don't know why Tank Dell isn't 25% owned. I didn't know. He should have been. I don't know, 30% owned last week. Was he? I think he was.
It was super high on last week.
Yeah. So why isn't he there this week after doing exactly what everyone wanted him to do? In an amazing matchup.
All right. Well, let me give you the counterpoint. Why aren't we playing Nico Collins, who had more targets in that game? So are you at this point just convinced that Tank Dell is better than Nico Collins? Is that what it comes down to?
This is how I wrote it up. I wrote it up earlier in the week that, okay, Tank Dell is going to be the chalkiest wide receiver play of the week, and rightfully so. Over the last 3 weeks, he has 200 more air yards than any other receiver. He's been really productive. This was CJ Stroud's boy. He told the Texans to draft him. He looks awesome. He's getting open at will. It's a top 6 matchup, but Nico Collins is going to be way too low owned because he's a really good play. I think the field is a little overconfident that Dell is the wide receiver 1 when guess what? Nico saw better volume last week. He's the more efficient receiver by yards per route run. They both have the same number of spike weeks. The issue is I'm looking at ownership and it's okay, Tank Dell didn't come in at 30% like I thought he was going to be. He's coming in at, I don't know, half that. So he's just an awesome play, but Nico's also an awesome play. I like both a lot.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that because Nico Collins, 11 targets in the most recent game, Tank Dell 10 as well. Both look fantastic. Do you have any worries about the matchup here? I mean, it is not.
No, it's okay. Tell me, go ahead.
All right. I mean, so just sorting by last 5, where do we have Jack? I feel like Jacksonville is near the bottom here. Am I wrong about that? Okay. I guess they're middle of the pack. Jacksonville's defense against wide receivers over the past 5 games. Slightly negative matchup here.
Yeah. What about left wide receiver? Click on left wide receiver. That's interesting.
All right. Left wide receiver, Jacksonville is not as good. They don't defend. So who
is the I think they mix these guys around, but let me see.
Can I find that in the data suite right here?
No, wide receiver versus cornerback chart. That's typically Nico Collins 42% of the time, Tank Dell 30% of the time. That's interesting. Yeah, I would just look over the full season sample, and full season sample Jaguars are bottom 6. But that's a good point that it seems they've tightened up most recently. I guess with Tyson Campbell back being the big thing. Were they down a cornerback? I feel like I remember them being down a cornerback.
Oh. I don't remember. I think that does sound right though.
Yeah, Tyson Campbell's out. And I think Darius, whatever his name is.
Okay. They're out for this week.
No, Darius Williams was out for a while, I think, but he's back now. Tyson Campbell, he's out. He's their best cornerback.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, interest in both Dell and Collins. That is what I like to hear. I mean, that's our tools like both to some extent. I guess we have Dell pretty significantly over owned at 14%. So you're saying it should be 30%. You're disagreeing a little bit with that take. But then Nico Collins is somebody that I thought there was going to be a bigger gap in the ownership. So I was a little bit disappointed to see Nico Collins picking up some ownership, but still, it's just 9% to me seems like nice leverage off of. I wouldn't be surprised to see Dell come in pretty significantly above our ownership number just based on what he did last week. Like, I think there is something to, like, everybody played him last week and it worked out for them, so everybody's going to want to go right back there to him. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the ownership coming in higher here, although the ownership projection is always going to beat me 95% of the time. So who knows? We'll see how that goes. Who else? We want to talk about these Tampa Bay guys? Godwin, Evans. Do you have a take there?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even write up Godwin. I would just play Evans. I think I don't know. I seriously doubt Godwin's upside, especially relative to that of Evans. Is an awesome matchup for both of them, though.
Yeah, we have positive leverage on both Godwin and Evans. So yeah, 10% going to ownership going to Evans with a 14% chance of being optimal. We actually have Godwin with an 18% chance of being optimal at 12% ownership. You just think that you think he's washed, or what do you dislike about Godwin? Just the opportunities?
Just the lack of upside relative to Mike Evans. I guess Godwin did have a few double-digit target games this year, but he has one touchdown on the year. He's eclipsed 80 yards just once. Meanwhile, like Evans, if you throw out that one game he left early with an injury, he's been right up there with some of the top wide receivers in fantasy. He'd be on the slate 6th in XFP per game, 6th in fantasy points per game. Top 7 matchup.
Is it just Baker Mayfield can't support 2-star receivers like Tom Brady can?
Yeah, well, to me, it's just clear that there's a preference, and it's Evans. And if you played Godwin every week, I think he's hurt you every week minus maybe one, and that might have been a game Evans got hurt.
Yeah. We talked about liking Josh Allen as Stephon Diggs. You just go there when you play Josh Allen, or anybody else you like?
Yeah, I think Diggs can go under own, especially relative to AJ Brown, because he's had back-to-back brutal matchups, Jets and Patrick Surtain. But before that, he was just like an absolute stud, and this is the ultimate get-right spot for him. Eagles are giving up the second most schedule adjusted to wide receivers, the 4th most fantasy points per game to wide receiver ones. It's a great schematic matchup. And like I said, but before those back-to-back brutal matchups, he was averaging 22 fantasy points per game. I like him. We should talk about the Jaguars wide receivers.
Yeah.
I'm not super convicted on this, but I think it's like play Kirk and Cash up against this slot funnel defense. But then play Ridley for tournaments, because like, I don't really think Kirk has much of a ceiling. Maybe this is a week where that doesn't really matter, but he's only cleared 20 DraftKings fantasy points once. That was week 2. Ridley has the Zay Jones skeleton key narrative working in his favor. Yep. Whether or not that's a thing, it's just, we know Ridley clearly has the better ceiling. So that's how I'd play it.
Okay. So it sounds like you have some interest in both of them, but Kirk would be the cash game play. Sounded like you are not really interested in these playing the full on Rams stack. What about the Rams as individual? Like, do you like Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua as like one-off plays?
Yeah, Cooper Kupp kind of scares the crap out of me. The low ankle sprain, and then the best argument for Puka, I feel like, is assuming Cooper Kupp is seriously hurt. He's playing the decoy role, or he's just not effective. And so Puka goes back to like who he was through the first 4 weeks of the season, where he was like, I don't know, the number 1 or number 2 scoring wide receiver in fantasy. But again, like, I do worry about Stafford's health. He was the second worst or second least most accurate quarterback in football last week. It is an awesome matchup, like an amazing matchup, and like he could easily get there on volume alone. He was one of the players I really struggled with.
Stafford, that is?
No, Puka.
Oh, Puka. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I'll open it up to you before I ask any more questions. Who else? Who do you like as contrarian plays, or any other players you want to talk
Oh
about?
boy. Colts wide receivers like a lot. Texans wide receivers like a lot.
Does that go to Alec Pierce also, or is he kind of out of the equation with Josh Downs presumably playing a bigger role?
Absolutely no interest in Alec Pierce. Were you on Alec Pierce?
No, I'm not on Alec Pierce, but I looked at his. I was looking at the most recent game. They didn't play in week 11, so this will have to be week 10. But he played like 96, ran like 96% of routes.
Yeah, I know he's Chris Hogan reincarnated.
Okay, yeah, he had one target in that game.
Rich Rebar calls guys like him cardio kings, just out there, on the treadmill, just running. All right, so another guy for you, Deontay Johnson. It's just like 4,900, insane volume. He had a 29% target share last week. I know he scored like 3 fantasy points, but top 7 wide receiver in target share over the last month of the season. Not at all priced like it. Top XFP related value, the slate. Have to mention him, have to bring it up. Maybe the Matt Canada departure, is the cure to what's been ailing this offense. I'm kind of skeptical of that. Honestly, in my article, the Everything Report, I kind of let it off with just like, this is like a weird year. This is a gross year. There's no parity this year. Something like the top 5 offenses in football have supported more 30 plus DraftKings fantasy point games than all other teams combined. It's just like, this is a year with like, injuries, the quarterback injuries, where like you could just write off some teams. And so I said that in like this opening statement of the article, where like you could just cross off the Steelers or guys like Deontay Johnson. But I don't know. I kind of want to chase that volume with him. Maybe that's a mistake. Rashid Shaheed. I mean, and Chris Olave, you can make a case for as well. But no Michael Thomas obviously leads, and A.T. Perry at this.
I was going to ask you about A.T. Perry. Yeah.
Shout out Danny Kelly, who's like one of the best film watchers in the game and a close friend of mine. Like, he assures me A.T. Perry is damn good at ball, and he just needs a chance. And so like when Danny gives a shout out like that, my ears definitely perk up.
I picked up A.T. Perry in my unlimited keeper league because I have very few bench wide receivers, and I thought maybe he has a shot because somebody on Twitter had written about how good he was. So maybe it was Dan. I don't know.
If I had to pick a favorite, definitely be Shaheed, though. He's just running about 60% of his routes from the slot, and the Falcons are a top slot funnel, or at least that's just where they're most vulnerable. They're really tough on the perimeter, so I would chase Shaheed over the other options.
And you have been the Rashid Shaheed whisperer this year, so you got to listen when Scott says to play Rashid Shaheed.
It's not the perfect zone matchup, which is what we've been targeting, but he does have the cornerback matchup. Mike Evans, we mentioned. Oh, Khalil Shakir is like a legitimately good play. Over the last 4 weeks, he's running a route on 69% of the dropbacks.
Nice.
Only 4 targets per game, but also 72 yards per game. Third most efficient wide receiver from the slot this year, behind only Jamar Chase and Tyreek Hill. When Allen's had a good slot wide receiver, they've been successful for fantasy. Justin Watson too. Like, obviously, people are going to chase this because, he had done nothing all year but had 11 targets last week, and maybe he's a trap. Maybe the Chiefs wide receivers are a trap all year. And I've fallen for that trap so badly with like my love for Justin Ross and Kadarius Toney in the offseason. But I mean, 11 targets, 6 more than anyone else, 151 air yards, only 54% of the team's dropbacks, but there are those wide receiver injuries.
That's good. We don't have Kadarius Toney out of our tools yet. But yeah, that'll probably be a slight, like Kadarius Toney hasn't played that much anyway, right?
Really, it's just minimum priced Mahomes wide receiver who just saw 11 targets, and it's hard to argue with that. If you want to get contrarian and play some Rashid Rice, like that's probably smart. But I get it.
I guess Kadarius Toney ran 26% route participation last week for Kadarius Toney, 24% for Mecole Hardman. So they actually do open up a little bit more for Rashid Rice, Justin Watson, Sky Moore, potentially at least. I think the previous week they had played even less than that, but they actually do open up a little bit more for these receivers. So I think those are good. And Justin Watson, min price too. So that's kind of interesting at least.
I like Shaheed more, but Demario Douglas is another one. Giants are, their defense is kind of not great, but they're easily bottom 3 against slot wide receivers. So that would be a good spot for him if Mac Jones is the starter. If not, I would just look elsewhere.
I need to ask you, since you brought up Pop Douglas, we got to talk about Juju Smith-Schuster because he is popping in these stochastic tools. And I saw this honestly, and I thought it must be a mistake this morning. And then we keep updating, and Juju Smith-Schuster continues to look great. He's min priced. We've got him at sub 8% ownership, 21% chance of being optimal for Juju Smith-Schuster. It definitely makes me ill to think about playing Juju, but 82% route participation in the last game. You can see here only had one target. Do you have any interest in the min price Juju?
I don't think so. I just don't think there's any upside.
Okay.
I think he's just like fully washed. He season high of 8.1. Oh no. One season high of 11.1 DraftKings fantasy points. His only game over 8. I just don't think there's any upside there. I like Justin Watson more for sure.
Okay. So you prefer Justin Watson as your min priced receiver.
I get a few more.
Yeah.
Greg Dortch versus Ron Dale. All right. So I've been saying, I just think Greg Dortch is so much better than Ron Dale. Sorry. And like every time he's been given the opportunity, he's proven he's better than Ron Dale. Over the last 2 seasons, route share of 66% or better. Greg Dortch averages 15.2 fantasy points per game. Ron Dale averages 9.6 fantasy points per game. The only issue is this is a slot funnelish matchup, really tough on the perimeter. But I mean, Michael Wilson's out. Marquise Brown's banged up. I honestly think it's close, and I'm like the Greg Dortch guy, just given the matchup. But definitely got to play my guy Dortch. Anytime I'm given the opportunity. Drake London up against a Marshawn Lattimore-less Saints defense is fine. Trent Irwin backup connection is fine. A.T. Perry is fine. And then I got one Galaxy brain play I want to pick your brain on, but
all right, let's hear it.
Maybe Jamar Chase should never be sub 5% ever. What do you think?
Yeah. I don't think I'm going. So yeah, seeing 4% Jamar Chase, it's at least it's a good call out just because of the ownership being so low. I wrote him off earlier as I was going through. I was like, I'm just not playing an expensive wide receiver who's relying on Jake Browning. But I mean, you are right. Like, would we be that shocked to see them throw 2 touchdowns? They're both to Jamar Chase and he gets a 100-yard bonus. I guess I wouldn't be that shocked to see it. It is. So I've said in the past, like the best place to find contrarian plays are good players in bad spots and bad players in good spots. And by bad players, I mean players who don't typically get a ton of opportunity in spots where they're getting more opportunity. Jamar Chase clearly qualifies as a good player in a bad spot. So he definitely qualifies of the places that typically you can find the best contrarian plays. So from that perspective, I can see it. I don't think I'm going to go there this week just because I think that there are enough other plays that I like enough that I don't need to. Muhammad agrees with you. Jamar Chase is going to kill that secondary. Man, I don't know. I don't know that I fully trust Jake Brown. I don't know if that last second touchdown last week is going to be enough for me to go there. But you think you could, make a case for it?
Yeah, so when Jamar Chase scored 60 DraftKings fantasy points that one week, it led me in the offseason to write an article that said like guys like Jamar Chase should never be sub 5%. It's just like you can't ever let that happen. And I get that like Jake Browning changes the equation, but it's really like how much does it change the equation? Because I mean, like, is he going to be worse than how bad Bryce Young has been? Because like Adam Thielen's been fine this
True.
year. We've seen a 40 burger from Amon-Ra St. Brown with Tim Boyle as his quarterback, a 40 burger from Devontae Adams with Stidham as his quarterback, DJ Moore 35 with Darnold and Kyle Allen. And Jamar Chase is just one of those transcendent talents. And like the cheat code also, by the way, was always like, especially when T Higgins was out or banged up. And so it's like, would anyone be surprised if he just, Browning comes in and he's like, listen, I know the task being asked of me here is just get the ball to Jamar Chase as often as possible. And Chase gets 15 targets and 111 yards and a touchdown, maybe two. But I know this one's Galaxy Brain. Graham Barfield, Johnny Proctor didn't like it on my show. So I just wanted to bounce it off to you.
I honestly, I think that it is a reasonable call. Like it would not be that shocking if we come out a Sunday and see, yeah, Jamar Chase had 12 receptions on 15 targets or maybe even more. Like it would not be that shocking with T Higgins out to see Browning just absolutely funnel it to Jamar Chase every time. So I don't entirely hate it. Like I wrote it off pretty quickly when I was asked about Jamar Chase earlier, but I can see the case for it for sure. Just even with the bad quarterback, you get enough volume, just raw 100 yards and on 10 receptions. That's a lot of fantasy points right there. You don't even necessarily need the touchdown there. So yeah,
I feel like he also makes sense in like the age of the opto and sim where it's like
he's not definitely well at all.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and that's I was going to say the same thing because somebody in chat just said Chase isn't. Yeah, GC says Chase isn't worth the 8,300.
Correct, but like that doesn't matter
correct
if he scores 35, right? And like
right
on this slate, like he's a transcendent talent, and like we've seen shittier wide receivers score 35 with like far worse quarterbacks. So I don't know, or similar quarterbacks at least.
I think you've talked me into maybe I'll play a share or two of
yeah. All right.
I think you made a good point, to be honest. I think that it is a very valid point that he's talented enough. He's alpha enough that that he should be theoretically a new quarterback coming in should just be like, I'm going to get it to my best player. If Browning is capable of doing that, I guess we'll find out. But yeah, that is a good point that they should be at least feeding him the ball. That's a valid reason to consider him in some lineups. All right. Anybody else that you want to talk about here?
No, I don't think so.
Sub 1% Gabe Davis. Any interest there?
I just really think like not in terms of usage, like the route share is still there, but I think like maybe in Josh Allen's eyes is Dalton Kincaid has just really supplanted him as the number 2 and maybe even Shakir is the number 3 in terms of targets. True. That could just be, me being misled by a recent sample, but I don't know. I just don't think he's good, and he's not cheap at all. I would much rather play Kincaid and Shakir and Diggs for sure.
You didn't have a ton of interest in DTR. Do you have any interest in any of these receivers as one-offs against Denver?
Amari Cooper is going to draw shadow coverage from Patrick Surtain, so he's dead. Okay. Maybe Elijah, but I really like Ford and another play we'll talk about in a little bit.
Okay. Sounds good. I think you talked about having some interest in Jacoby Myers. If you're going to play anybody as a bring back in your Mahomes stacks, it would be Jacoby Myers. We have him at 0.1% ownership.
I know. I just thought about it. I don't know that I can. I'm sure I won't, but it's
you'd rather just do a no bring back essentially.
Yeah.
And I mentioned DeAndre Hopkins. I brought up Will Levis as somebody that I have interest in. I'm going to have interest in DeAndre Hopkins. He's obviously in my Will Levis stacks. He might just solo stack him with DeAndre Hopkins here. It's a great spot against Carolina. 7% ownership going there. 10.6% chance of being optimal here for us. So looks good for us in our tools. I have interest in going to some DeAndre Hopkins stacks. I know you prefer the run game, but any interest in DeAndre Hopkins?
I think he's a good play. It just like hasn't been hitting because they're just so slow paced and they're so run heavy. But like, I didn't think Levis looked that bad last week. And I think DeAndre Hopkins looks awesome whenever he gets the ball. It's a bad matchup. Like that's part of why I love Henry is it does look like a massive run funnel, but for a player this talented at that price tag and that projected ownership, I think no, I can't hate on that at all.
Cool. All right. Should we move on and look at tight ends?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to do an ad read or something. I really have to go to the bathroom, so I'll be right
All
back.
right, you go pee, and I don't know that I have an ad read, but you go ahead and pee, and I'll think of something to talk about while Scott is down here. Maybe I'll pull up the stochastic sims here. Hang on. Yeah, here's the page that we're on. I'm just going to go. So if you want to find the stochastic sims, again, the link is in the description of this video. You just go to NFL. So after you sign up for the sims, you'll have access to this. But you start with the contest generator. This is where you can generate your contest here. So figure out the field size that you're playing in. If you're playing in the largest, and we're looking at DraftKings, this is the main slate. I'm going to go to the largest pool size you can do right now, which is 10,000. Good enough representation of the fields that you're playing in. And then you can choose what kind of stack exposures do you want in your field in the Sims. So this is the default is 45% of our lineup is going to be quarterback +1, 25% quarterback +2. Let's see if I put in a couple more quarterback +3. I'm gonna up the bring back to 40%, click apply. Now I'm going to click generate lineups. And what it's doing right now, it's generated 10,000 lineups for us within those stack types that I just put. So we're going to get our 10,000. Then what I'm going to do is simulate those lineups against each other. So it's just the 10,000 lineups that is generating right now, which are all going to be, it's supposed to be a representation of the field essentially. So it's not going to be all great lineups, but there's going to be a lot of great lineups in here, maybe some not so great lineups, but that look like lineups you'd expect the field to play. So I'm just right now generating those 10,000 lineups. And in a minute here, once after those lineups have generated, usually takes about a minute. Oh, Scott is back. So we're not going to go through the entire Sims package. I was just letting them, while you're gone, Scott, reminding people, this is 50% off. You can find the link in the description of this video if you want to check out the
maybe we should play around with it one day where, when we're building our lineups, it's like, all right, well, if we like this, I don't know, Minshew dub stack is what would the sim do to optimize it?
Yeah, I've gotten more into using the Sims because I like to play so many like off the wall players. It was tough for me some because I'm like, I don't want to generate lineups that like there might be players that I like that won't even be represented in 10,000 lineups because the field isn't going to get there, but it's getting more and more customizable. So yeah, it is something that we should check out at some point, but I don't think that's what people want to do right now. Something that people, again, you can check it out for yourself. Link in the description, 50% off currently if you're interested. We're moving on to tight ends, right? You don't have any other wide receivers you want to talk about?
No, yeah.
Okay.
Moving on to tight ends.
Yeah, and we'll do tight ends, and then we will build some lineups, and then I've got my NBA show coming up next. All right. So highest owned tight end, and we have pretty clear 4 separating from the pack in terms of optimal odds, and there are also the 4 highest owned here, those being Trey McBride, Evan Ingram, Dalton Kincaid, Travis Kelce. Are you inclined to just like go to the best 4 tight ends on the slate, or are you? I guess let's start with those 4, and then we can talk about anybody else you might rather go to instead. How do you feel about McBride, Ingram, Kincaid, and Kelce?
Yeah, if I were like a sim, to me, like the optimal tight ends would be like 50% Trey McBride, 25% Dalton Kincaid, 15% David Njoku.
Wow. Okay.
And then the rest like Ingram, Kelce, Schultz.
The Scott Brain Sims disagree with some of these plays here. All right. So McBride, it sounds like, is your favorite tight end play of the slate.
I'm just telling you what it should be. I think we have him project to be a little bit chalkier. Yeah, we have him at 33%, which sounds
surprise me.
Close to right. I mean, he's just been so dominant in terms of volume usage. We talk about it every single week, but he gets a nuts matchup this week. We've talked about how Hollywood Brown really struggles against zone coverage, or at least he's much better in man. And McBride is typically, and Michael Wilson step up in zone. He's been crushing zone. He gets a zone heavy matchup, but it's also, you should pull up schedule adjusted for this, but it's the nuts matchup. Rams are the number one tight end funnel defense. And so you look, they're a top 3 matchup. So they rank 3rd in allowed to tight ends, but look at how tough they are against outside wide receivers. Look at how tough they are against, pass catching running backs. And so funnels all the volume to the tight end. This is a tight end funnel passing attack, you could argue, like a passing offense, I mean, for Arizona. And so perfect spot. I think he's
we also got Michael Wilson out, so he's like the only big receiver for the
right. Little Rondale Moore, little Greg Dortch.
Yep, little Marquise Brown, who I believe Marquise Brown also questionable, which I heard that somewhere. I didn't actually see that, but I think I heard somebody say that he's also questionable. So yeah, like they have the one big pass catcher, and they're already funneling it to him. That's a good point. So McBride looks great. You had some interest in I don't remember. I know you said Njoku in there.
Hollywood is seriously questionable. He missed practice both on Thursday and Friday.
Okay. Yeah, so that helps as well.
So again, 50%. Sorry, that's just what the sim in my brain says. And then after that is Kincaid. Yeah, again, I just think he's probably supplanted Gabe Davis as the clear number 2, and I think rightfully so. Hasn't shown a ton of upside, but we know that's there, at least should be there in this game environment. Remarkably consistent. He's hit 16 fantasy points in 4 or 5 games. Really good volume. Top 10 matchup. Evan Ingram, I have a little bit lower. Is like he's still like a really great volume related value. It's just minimal touchdown upside. He has -9 receiving yards inside the red zone this year. He just has 1 end zone target. Still like a fine play. I just don't think he comes close to McBride or Kincaid or Njoku.
Who was the one you were just talking about?
Ingram.
Okay. Yeah. He's not gotten any kind of touchdown luck.
I'd rather play Njoku personally. You just look at what Njoku's done with DTR in DTR's 2 starts, led the team in targets in week 4 with 7, led the team in targets last week with 15. Neil, the guy saw 15 targets last week. It was the most of any tight end in any week this season. 29% target share with DTR. That's top 5 at any position. And guess what? You can go back to schedule adjusted. Denver ranks right above the Rams in terms of favorable matchup. So second best possible matchup for Njoku, not drawing ownership. I like him a lot.
Yeah, Ingram from this perspective also looks great just in terms of the matchup interest.
Oh yeah, I mean there's that. Yeah. Again, that's why I can't hate on him despite him not being involved near the end zone at all. So it's a great spot for all 3 of those guys.
I think in my earlier show, somebody was asking about Pat Freiermuth. Looks like he has a great matchup here. I didn't look at what he ended up playing in the most recent game. Did they ease him back in? Let's see.
Yeah, he had a 36% route share, 53% snap share. I wrote him up too. I like him. I mean, it's just the guy you were drafting top 10 among tight ends in season long, and probably just easing him back last week. Maybe they step it up. Great matchup.
I've heard a few people here mentioning Cade Otton. How much interest do you have, if any, in Cade Otton?
Yeah, I'd take that bet. I think Otton just stinks. Maybe he scores a touchdown though.
Not a believer in Otton. Welcome, Drew and Sue. Good to have you. Chris, this is sort of an interesting thought. Do you think Carr being out helps the odds of Taysom at all in terms of just like, is he going to get in and play a little quarterback at all? Do you have any thoughts there?
It could be for sure. Taysom's like
5,000.
My favorite player in the NFL. He's so fun, but I just can't ever play him in DFS. It's just, it could happen. Give him some goal line carries, a few targets, and a few pass attempts, and he could be the guy. He's just so tough for like a fantasy analyst to try and articulate the expectation there.
Cheshire Cat calling us rude for shitting on K-Dot. Apparently, apologies for shitting on your play. All right, any other tight ends you want to talk about before we build our lineups?
Tommy Tremble. He'll play 95% of the snaps, but he stinks. He'll probably only see 2 targets. Michael Mayer is only like, I like Freiermuth, but only slightly more. Dalton Schultz, like he's not a value, but we know the upside's there. He's leverage off of the wide receivers. Kelsey, I feel like people aren't going to play him outside of Mahomes lineups. So if you want to get unique, you can consider that. I think that's it. Really, it's just my sim brain telling me 50% McBride, 20% Kincaid.
All right, so we're jamming Kincaid. Sorry, we're jamming McBride this week. All right, that's a good synopsis of the tight ends, I think. Do you want to talk about defenses at all, or should we build our lineups?
No, let's talk defense. I need to do more. I have to tweak our projections and do some more research into it. But
all right, so we have the Patriots, the Chiefs, and the Broncos as chalk, all getting over 10% ownership. Any interest?
That seems right. What do you guys have as good leverage?
As our highest leverage play, we have Bucks defense. Yeah, I mean that makes sense with the Colts being a little bit chalky. I think they're the chalkiest wide receiver and running back. You can find some nice leverage on the Bucks, both in terms of just like ownership versus optimal, but then actual leverage against some of the opposing players as well. Browns defense up there, that makes sense to me. Good defense against the Broncos. Bills, interesting against the Eagles, I wouldn't think, but they're getting very little ownership. Raiders, that one surprised me. Raiders, a little bit of positive leverage against the Chiefs.
At 2,800 too, without Max Crosby. Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's asking a lot. So yeah, these are our top leverage plays. So who are your favorite defensive plays?
Oh, I don't know. I thought it was those top 3 that you had.
You just like the chalk, basically. I mean,
yeah,
Patriots, Chiefs, Broncos stand out as the 3 top.
I mean, you could do Giants. I guess that's another, playing with Saquon. I did have more thoughts. I just don't.
What about the Eagles? Like, I feel like that makes more sense to me. If the Eagles are a great leverage stack against Josh Allen, that makes more sense to me with all the interceptions he throws.
Wow, the cheapest defense this week is only 2,600.
Interesting. Okay, Texans against the Jaguars. Interesting. We got a little bit of positive leverage there. All right. Anything else on defenses, or you want to build some lineups?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Let's build some lineups. We're going to do the Millie Maker as always. Wait, that's not what I want to do. Lobby. All right. Entering the Millie. Who did I tell you? I'm going to build Stafford. I'm going to force you to play one Stafford lineup with me.
Yeah.
All right, let's do that. Let's get that one out of the way, just to make sure that you have exposure to Stafford lineup in one, and then we'll build some lineups that you want to do with players that you like instead. But for this first one, let's do a Stafford lineup. Who's your favorite? Oh, it's clearly we got to play McBride in this one, right?
Yeah, I will say, your boy Alex Baker would add Kyler to this. That seems to be his thing. Kyron. Oh yeah. No, that's a good call. Full on game stack. I like it. We like Kyron anyway. You got to ask him why he does that. Every time I see one of his winning lineups, I'm like, he did it again. What's he thinking here?
I think he's doing it because it keeps working for him.
I guess so, right?
He's winning contests.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Let's. Who's our cheap defense we can throw in here? You liked? Wait, no, not the Raiders.
I thought Eagles was a good call. Let me check. What we have as top values. Patriots, Chiefs, Titans, Broncos, Texans. I like the Eagles call though.
All right, you want to do it? I mean, because we're going to do other lineups that are just Josh Allen stack. So think that makes sense. All right, so now we have 4633 remaining for a running back, a wide receiver, and a flex. I feel like a wide receiver is the easiest spot to save some money. So we could play. I mean, Rashid Shaheed's a little bit below that price. What is Dortch? Should we go to the Greg Dortch?
Hell yeah.
All
Dortch
right, we're
God.
going Dortch God. The Dortch.
My phone for 3 years now, every time I type in Dortch, it autocorrects to Dortch God.
Love it. Yeah, he's just a target monster. Good play to get in there. Now we have 5,300 remaining. Are there any super cheap running backs we like? I know you're not a fan of the Tyjae Spears play.
Chase Edmonds.
Chase Edmonds would make a lot of sense if we end up.
We would have to give ourselves the right to swap off that.
Yeah. And then that will give us 6,300 remaining. Mixon, you don't like Godwin. Pacheco, we could get in there. Hopkins.
Great value.
Does that make sense?
I would go Pacheco probably.
I think that's a really solid lineup, to be honest. I like it. Oh man, I didn't even realize Dortch. So we did a full on.
Oh wow, yeah.
2 Arizona bringbacks. We have 3 skill players from the Rams. I don't hate it, honestly. That's a game that could go completely off. So I think that's.
I really think no one's gonna have. I think no one's gonna have Stafford. I think no one's gonna have Cup off of a low ankle. I don't think anyone's gonna have Dortch.
Yeah,
this
is gonna be unique. I like it. I don't know who plays when, so I'm assuming Pacheco, this is an afternoon game anyway, so I think we're fine. All right, can enter that one, and then let's enter another one. And how do you want to start this one?
Let's do Allen.
Good.
Devonta
Adams? Or Devonta Smith?
Devontae.
Yes, Devonta Smith. And then who do you want to pair with Allen?
Shakir.
You're
Kincaid.
A madman. We're skipping right past Diggs. All right. Okay.
And Diggs.
And Diggs. Okay. All right. So we are.
I mean, I thought about it, but yeah. And then we can always take one out depending on what we're building. And then running backs, let's do Kyron.
Okay. We're gonna have to get cheap somewhere.
Oh damn.
So you go super cheap at defense. I mean, Texans 2,600.
Sure.
You hate Trevor Lawrence, so you know.
I do. Mortal enemy.
Are we gonna? Do we want to try just throwing Chase Edmonds in here again?
But then after this, we can't do Chase Edmonds again.
Okay. And then that leaves us 3,600,
which is great.
Rondale, or no. I guess your guy Dortch. You just
we could do that.
You're biased.
Hold on.
You're Barrett. Okay.
The options are Khalil Shakir, we already have. Justin Watson.
Oh, then we could upgrade
Trent Irwin, A.T. Perry. Yeah, so let's do Justin Watson and then upgrade the defense, I guess.
Okay. Patriots against the Giants.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, that looks good to me. That came together pretty nicely, I think.
Yeah.
Full on. We got three-man Buffalo stack, 1 Eagle bring back. Makes a lot of sense to me. We got your guy Kyron in there, Chase Edmonds. So again, we need to, keep our eye on the news because that's going to be contingent on Rashad White being out. But looks really strong if we get that news the right way. And then we'll do one more lineup, and I'll let you start it off again. Choose the quarterback.
Let's do Minshew.
Minshew magic. All right.
We'll do that double.
Going double. Okay. Pittman was down 5,000. 4,800. Any Tampa bring back?
I'm just thinking about how highly owned Chase Edmonds is going to be if Rashad White gets rolled out. Yeah, we'll do Evans.
Okay, still 51.80 left per player. That's kind of nice. Should we fill in the defense here?
Sure.
You want to go Chiefs against Aiden O'Connell? Or something else?
Yeah. Yeah, we could do that. We could stack it with Pacheco.
Nice. Yeah, good call.
Fryermuth maybe at the tight end just to mix it up. See what we could do.
All right, 2,900. Price is right.
You know, your
Matchup's
boy
right.
Alex Baker would just play Jonathan Taylor on this lineup.
We could. He fits. Fits just fine.
Yeah. Well, let's see. You want to add Diggs or AJ Brown?
And see what we have. Yeah, we could do that. Let's go. We haven't played AJ Brown yet. All right, let's see if we can. So we'd have 4,900, either 4,700, or if we downgrade Brown to Diggs, we'd have 4,900. I can't think of who's available there. So we could play Hunt if we played Diggs there.
Chase Edmonds again? I mean, he fits the stack.
He does fit the stack perfectly. Is there?
I'm just thinking the field's gonna have like 1,000,000% Chase Edmonds, but yeah, this is kind of cheating for now. We might have to just like totally blow up all these lineups tomorrow.
Yeah, we'd probably just do some 2v2s, take out Chase Edmonds, one of the more expensive players, and adjust from there. Like we'd probably, if the 2v2 in this one, we'd probably get rid of Edmonds and Brown and just maybe move Edmonds up to Jonathan Taylor, or go back to your guy Kyron maybe. Who I keep calling him. I like Kyron too. Like I think he's a great play this week. We are in agreement there. But do you want to upgrade anybody here? Do we want to upgrade to? Is there somebody we like better than the Chiefs for 3,500 or less?
Yeah. All right. Let's make this more difficult on ourselves. You want to do Devonta instead of AJ Brown, and then see what we can do at running back
instead of Chase Edmonds.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah, let's do Devonta. And now we can fit Kyron perfectly there if we do that.
Hey, all right, I like that.
All right, so we're playing Kyron in all of our lineups. He's playing. We got away from the unknown with Chase Edmonds for one, so that's good. All right, so our week for our three lineups hinges on Kyron Williams pretty heavily here. I think I better wrap up and get to my NBA show.
Oh, that's right.
If you have one more that you think you have an idea for the start to a build that you want to do,
I have an idea.
All right, let's do one more then, since we've got the idea already here.
I just want to build a balanced team. Like I don't think there's going to be a lot of balanced lineups this week.
Okay.
What about Tank Dell? For sure.
Okay.
Or Nico. Honestly, you could pick it. It's not a huge deal.
You made it sound like a great Nico spot, and he's going to get lower ownership.
All right, you go ahead.
Yeah, that's my guy.
All right. Well, the same thing, Pittman or Downs.
Let's go with Downs. I feel like you made great cases for both of them, so let's build a lineup around two of the players that you made great cases for.
So I like doing this. I like just kind of getting my guys in and then seeing what happens from there. You want to do, all right, pick between Kyron and Derrick Henry.
We've already done Kyron and all of them, so I'm going to go to Henry for this one.
Okay. Now,
what about Ramondre? You didn't seem like you're super excited about him, but 5,800 against that Giants defense.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Or Jerome Ford.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right. You're gonna.
You can do Ford. I'm okay with Ford.
Do you want to give me two options and then I choose between them, or do you
Yeah,
want to split?
let's keep doing that. Let's do all right. Khalil Shakir or Dalton Kincaid.
Ooh. Let's go Kincaid.
Okay. You want to start fitting in chalk, I guess, because I feel like we're unique enough.
I mean, we could fit Jonathan Taylor in here. I think it would make sense in this lineup. And I don't know that we've played him yet, have we?
No. Yeah. Let's play him.
Okay. We didn't go Pittman, but we already have Downs in there, so I think we skipped past Pittman. I'm trying to remember who was chalky.
Well, I guess now maybe we should think about the stack.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we could go. We have not played.
What about Kyler McBride? We could.
I was going to say Kyler. Yeah,
I like
that. Makes a lot of sense. So we're going double tight end for this one, but we're not going tight end. Double, like, mid tight ends.
Hey, that's what won last week, right? Kincaid McBride.
Oh, I think is it exactly that? I think that you might be right about that. We could go. Do we want to pair our defense with either of our like Tennessee or Indy defense?
I like Tennessee. Yeah, that's a good call. Because that's the whole bet on Henry, in my opinion.
And then we have 5,200 left over.
Deontay, Drake London.
Not like my favorite range here, but we could go Deontay. Bet on the volume again. Who's your preference there?
I think I would take out maybe take out Kincaid and then try again and put McBride in tight end. Yeah, we could do Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk. We can do Rashid Shaheed, Deontay, Evans, Shakir. What about are there any mini stacks that look interesting? Mike Evans would be a mini stack.
And do you want to do any other Arizona players as part of our Kyler stack, or are we just doing straight up to Trey McBride?
I think it's McBride gets 10 catches and 75 yards, and Kyler has 2 rushing touchdowns.
Okay, so sorry,
it feels like.
Who are the others that you were just throwing out? I know you said.
Oh, I guess I would play Kyron in the flex to give us that bring back. You might not need one, to be honest.
Yeah, you don't need it. But
how much is Mike Evans? Because he also works as a mini stack if we wanted to.
Mike Evans, 7,400. So that leaves us. We would have to play a min price. We could play Justin Watson once again.
Yeah, I think he's fine.
Justin Watson.
Yeah. Patrick Mahomes, receiver who had 11 targets last week.
Boom. In a great spot against Las Vegas too.
Okay.
Yeah, single stack with a bring back.
All right, nice.
Oh wait, we didn't end up playing Kyron, did we? So no bring back, but that's fine.
I mean, we could swap. We could do a swap, but yeah.
No, I think this is good.
Okay.
All right, there we have it. One of these is going to win the millie. Can't tell you which one it's going to be. I know which one it's going to be, but I'm not going to say it. So one of these is going to win the millie. All right, Scott. I got to get to my basketball show. Any final words for the audience?
No, thanks for tuning in, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Check out fantasypoints.com. Check out Stochastic.
Yep. Perfect. I think that we've got discounts across the board. Fantasy Points, Stochastic. We have great deals going on right now. So check out link in the description of this video. You can find direct links to the actual deals for Stochastic. Fantasy Points I showed you earlier. You just click on the Fantasy Points link. There's that plans button in the top right on Fantasy Points if you want to see what deals they have available as well. But yeah, you can find them all in the description of this video. Thank you guys very much for watching. Good luck this weekend.